Hi everybody and welcome back to my English language channel, created to help A-level students studying English language and anyone else that wants to look at understanding the more technical aspects of English. In today's session we're going to be looking at discourse markers. So what we will cover today then is what are discourse markers, how are they used in different text types and spoken language, and then looking at some examples of discourse markers and how we can write about them. Firstly, we start with understanding what discourse markers are. So discourse markers are words or phrases that help connect or structure our speech and writing. Now on the screen you can see a variety of very common discourse markers. You can see that some of them are one word and some are phrases. Like when we looked at hedge words, there's no exhaustive list of discourse markers. But if it is a word or a phrase that is being used to structure a text and move that text along in some way, normally at the start of a sentence or a paragraph or an utterance of spoken language, then you can probably guess that it will be a discourse marker. During this video so far, I've used a variety of them. I started at the beginning by saying hi everybody, then moved my video along by using in today's session, and then when switching slides I started with so and then firstly, partly to model that they are something people use all the time without even thinking about it. The words I've chosen on the screen now vary in terms of their formality and how likely they are to appear in written or spoken language. The phrase in conclusion, for example, is a lot more likely to be found in written language. Not to say that it can't ever be used in spoken, but in some contexts it just wouldn't sound right, it would sound too formal. Then we have examples like so and I mean, which are more likely to be found in spoken text. And if they're being used within a written text, it might be because the writer is purposely trying to sound really informal or chatty. It might be useful right now to pause this video and look at the discourse markers on the screen and make a note about which ones are more likely to be used in spoken language and which are more likely to be used in written. Let us now look at 3 examples of discourse markers being used. Each of these examples are taken from the set text from the current Edexcel A-level specification, so some of you might be familiar with these already. The first one we have here is a newspaper article written by Charlie Brooker that reads, "Although the private eye story wasn't completely wrong, I have stopped doing this particular column for a while, for reasons I'll explain in a moment. I was all set to write to their letters page to whine in the most pompous manner imaginable. Anyway, I haven't quit the newspaper, but I have for the meantime stopped writing weekly." You can see that I've cut this down and I've highlighted the discourse markers in yellow. And this article follows quite a typical structure of using them at the start of paragraphs, showing that each paragraph moves Brooker's article and points on slightly, which is something you'd expect from a newspaper article. However, if you're familiar with Charlie Brooker and his work, you'll know that he's someone who is quite informal and sarcastic in his language use, and you can see here that he's used a very informal discourse marker with the word anyway, which you would normally see in spoken language rather than written. And that helps to give his article more of an informal and chatty feel to it, which is likely what he was aiming for. So our second example then, and you can see that's me using another discourse marker in my own speech, is an interview between Princess Diana and Martin Bashir. And in some ways we have the opposite to Brooker here, where this is a spoken text, but Diana must keep to a certain level of formality in her speech. So you have the interviewer, Bashir, using the discourse marker up until you came into this family, and then asking his question, which is, "The monarchy seemed to enjoy an unquestioned position at the heart of British life. Do you feel that you're at all to blame for the fact that the survival of the monarchy is now a question that people are asking?" And then Diana, using discourse markers throughout her response, says, "No, I don't feel blame. I mean, once or twice I've heard people say to me that, Diana's out to destroy the monarchy, which has bewildered me, because why would I want to destroy something that is my children's future? I will fight for my children on any level in order for them to be happy and have peace of mind and carry out their duties. But I think what concerns me most of all about how people discuss the monarchy is they become indifferent, and I think that is a problem, and I think that should be sorted, yes." You can see the phrase "I think" is a discourse marker because it moves her answer along, and you could perhaps argue that the second 2 times she uses "I think" are also discourse markers, or that she is using them as hedge words to soften what she is saying. The beauty with studying English language is that you will see it in one way, someone else might interpret it in another way, and as long as you can justify what you're saying, you can have different opinions. But definitely we've got I mean and we've got I think, which might be slightly less formal than we would have assumed Diana might have spoken, which maybe also makes her speech seem like it's more sincere in the way she's speaking. And then lastly, we won't look at this one in any great detail, but here we have part of JFK's inauguration speech, meaning we have a spoken language text, but every word will have been carefully crafted and thought about due to the fact that the audience for this would have been huge and they would know that this is the type of speech that will be long lasting. So you can see here that the discourse markers have been used to structure the text and provide it with a pattern. So you've got one paragraph starting with "to those people," the next one "to our sister republics," then "to that World Assembly," and then ending with "finally." Each one of these paragraphs is starting with the word "to" and then moving on to address a different group of people who are likely to be listening to this speech. Here then the discourse markers are playing a huge part in the structure of his speech and have been used in a way that is likely to be memorable for the audience as well. As always, the final thing then is, how do we write about discourse markers? Let's look back at the Brooker piece and imagine that we are analysing this and want to talk about the informal use of the discourse marker anyway. This is what I've written about it, and I've highlighted all my subject-specific terminology in red. So I've said, Brooker uses discourse markers throughout his newspaper article in order to help structure his text. They are typically used at the start of each paragraph, which fits in with the conventions of the genre and demonstrate that this is a planned piece of text. At the start of one paragraph, he uses the informal discourse marker anyway, which gives his writing a chatty, casual tone, which is typical for his style of writing. Hopefully this will help you to see that discourse markers are quite simple to write about once you become confident in identifying them, and that if a writer or a speaker has used one which seems unusual for their text type, then you can figure out and then write about the reason behind that. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there is anything else in particular you want me to cover.